Okay. Um, this is GbaramatuVoiceTV, the number one Niger Delta Media Centre in the heart of Warri, Delta State. Yes, today being the 21st of January 2025. Yes, Best Lowo is my name, and we are on Beyond the Headlines, where we give you insights and in-depth analysis of our leading stories of our various Nigerian newspaper. Of course, I'm not alone in the studio. I have my colleague with me this morning.
Yeah, good morning, this special morning. My name is Sheriff David Jeffrey. So, how are you doing this morning?
I'm okay, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing very fine. So, we'll be moving down to today's business, where I'll be reviewing the different newspapers we'll be having. So, we'll be starting with the Nation's newspaper this morning. How Tinubu is stabilizing economy, reducing poverty. Court condemns media trial, denies EFCC arrest warrant request, says Otudeco orders not properly served. Subscribers kick as NCC OK's 50% tariff hike for telcos. We can read about that on page 28 of the Nation's newspaper. FCC versus ex-bank chiefs. Court adjourns to February 18. We can read about that on page 5 of the Nation's newspaper. Lastly, Suleja tanker explosion. Death tolls rises to 98. Why Nigerians should not panic over fuel hike by hype man. We can read about that on page 6 and page 7 of the Nation's newspaper. Thank you very much. That's all we'll be having for the Nation's newspaper this morning.
Yes, you've just heard from my colleague on the Nation's newspaper. And quickly, I'll be reviewing stories on the Punch newspaper. First, with the lead story. 50% tariff hike. Nigerians may spend 6.74 trillion naira on cars. Yes, that you would get details on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Yes, to the top. To the top corner. Farmer header crisis. More northern states adopt Ruga to curb clashes. Yes, that you will get details on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Niger explosion death toll hits 98. Yes, you'd get details, a more detailed story on page 17 of the Punch newspaper. Court condemns a media trial, denies EFCC arrest warrant request, says Otudeco orders not properly served. I served FBN with dedication and integrity, Onasonya said by Onasonya. I'll defend my reputation aggressively. This was said by Otudeco. Trump returns as 47th U.S. president, rejects transgender illegal immigration. Sanwo-Olu pledges to work with new Lagos speaker. Yes, that's story. You get more story on page 6 of the Punch newspaper. 6 killed, 3 injured in Ogun, multiple crashes. Yes, you get more details on page 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper. And lastly, court adjourns Dangote Refinery's 100 billion naira suit against marketers. Yes, and that's all we have on the Punch newspaper.
That's very excellent. You have heard from my colleague. We'll be moving down to the Nigerian Tribune newspaper this morning. Another Trump era begins. Potential impact on Nigeria oil, global trade, climate, gender, and immigration. We can read about that on page 4 of the Nigerian Tribune newspaper. Solid minerals. NAS doubts FG's commitment to diversify economy. Summons finances, budget ministers, budget DG. Ministry of Solid Minerals Budget Defense deferred. We can read about that on page 3 of the Nigerian Tribune newspaper. NCC OK's 50% telecoms traffic hike. We can read about that on page 6 of the Nigerian Tribune newspaper. Man found to be HIV positive after raping girl with sickle cell disease in Abuja. We can read about that on page 7 of the Nigerian Tribune newspaper. Lastly, alleged 42.3 billion naira fraud. EFCC files 13 count charges against Otudeco and others. We can read about all that in Nigerian Tribune newspaper. So that's all we'll be having for Nigerian newspaper, the Nigerian Tribune newspaper this morning. Thank you.
Yes, quickly moving forward, I would be reviewing stories on the Vanguard newspaper. Ahead 2027, why opposition can't upstage ruling party. Yes, you would get more details on page 14 of the Vanguard newspaper. Court condemns media trial, denies EFCC arrest warrant request, says Otudeco, orders not properly served. And yes, that you would get more details on page 18 of the Vanguard newspaper. Edo Guba Tribunal. Journalists attacked as DSS, APC supporters clash. Yes, you would get more details on page 28 of the Vanguard newspaper. I won't join issues with Wike, said by Wabara. Yes, you would get more details of that story on page 11 of the Vanguard newspaper. Elevated inflation, a major economic challenge, said by Wale Edun. Rivers crisis, why I won't settle rift with Fubara, said by Wike. You can't win political war against Fubara. Reconcile now, said by Sarah Igbe. That you would get more details on page 28 of the Vanguard newspaper. I was saved by God to make America great again, said by Trump. Yes, you would get more details of the story on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. NCC approves 50% tariff rise for telecom operators. Yes, you would get more details on page 26 of the Vanguard newspaper. Yes, on sports, Okosha calls for support. Yes, you would get more of these details on page 38 of the Vanguard newspaper. Yes, and that is all I have for the Vanguard newspaper.
That's very, very excellent. We'll be moving forward to the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. On my top left-hand side, we are having PDP NEC meeting threatened as governor's truce flops. We can have more details about that on page 10 of the Daily Trust newspaper. FG approves 50% hike in calls, data tariffs. We can read about that on page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Trump inaugurated, declares mass deportation, says only 2 genders will be in US. We can read about that on page 24 of the Daily Trust newspaper. FG reawards Abuja Kaduna Highway contract to inactive company. $6 billion Mambila power contract. Sunrise CEO testifies in Paris court today. We can read about that on page 5 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Police mourns as officer found dead in Abuja hotel. We can get more details about that on page 16 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Count us out of negotiations with bandits, Katsina governor. We can have more details about that on page 6 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Lastly, Abbas leads discourse on food security at 22nd Daily Trust dialogue. We can have more details about that on page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper. So that's all we'll be having this morning for you on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
Yes, quickly moving, I will be taking stories on New Telegraph newspaper. First with the lead story, telecoms. NCC approves 50% tariff increase for phone calls, data, SMS. Yes, you would get more detailed story on page 6 of the New Telegraph newspaper. From the top, 2024, amid decay, oil-producing states lavished 1.34 trillion naira, 13% earnings. Chinese firm backs Nigeria's $20 billion gas projects. Yes, you would get more details on page 8 of the New Telegraph newspaper. Niger tanker explosion. We have complied with presidential directive, says federal government. Yes, you will get more details of that story on page 2 and 4 of the New Telegraph newspaper. Southern states pilgrims to pay 8.7 million naira. Borno Adamawa zone 8.3 million naira. Yes, you will get more details of that story on page 4 of the New Telegraph newspaper. Alleged 76 billion naira, $31.3 million fraud. Court grants AMCON MD, 4 others bail. Nigeria's economy will emerge stronger in 2025. Federal government reassures citizens. Yes, you would get more of that details on page 4 of the New Telegraph newspaper. Trump sworn in as 47th U.S. president promises new golden age. Yes, you would also get more details of the story on page 2 and 6 of the New Telegraph newspaper. Yes, and that's all we have on the New Telegraph newspaper.
Very excellent. We'll be moving straight to this day newspaper this morning. In a bid to improve services, NCC approves 50% rise in telecom traffic. We have more details about that on page 5 of the Daily of this day newspaper. 2025 budget. Humanitarian Affairs Ministry seeks 260 billion naira to create 2 million jobs. House Committee insists 595 billion naira allocated to intelligence subsector inadequate. Senate rejects Information Ministry MIAG 8.9 billion naira budget. We can have more details about all that on page 9 of this day newspaper. Trump inaugurated 47th US president, says America must drill baby drill. Biden, Obama, Bush, Kampala, Harris attend event. Technical billionaires, Musk, Bezos, Zuckerberg, others flood ceremony. We can read more about this on page 9 of this day newspaper. Vance takes oath as vice president. We can have more details about that on this day newspaper. Against all odds, Trump is president again. We can also read more about that on this day newspaper. That's all we'll be having for you this morning on this day newspaper.
Yes, and lastly, before we go into full details of our lead stories of our various Nigerian newspaper, I'll quickly be taking on sports. Punch Sport Extra. Osimhen tops Arsenal's January wish list. Yes, you would get more of these details on page 6 of the Punch Sport Extra. Boniface returns to Leverkusen training. Yes, you would get detailed story of page 7 of the Punch Sport Extra. Fighter sends boss is Onuashu. Yes, you would get more of this story on page 6 of the Punch Sport Extra. Milan ready to offload Chukwueze. Yes, detailed story on page 6 of the newspaper. City are back, says Pep. Yes, detailed story on page 4 of the newspaper. Ancelotti to quit Madrid end of season. Yes, you would get more of this story on page 8 of the Punch Sport Extra. Arsenal sweats over Saliba fitness. Yes, more of the stories on page 4 of the newspaper. Golden Girls. Nigeria under 19 women's team spreading the cricket gospel in Nigeria. Yes, you would get more of these details on page 2 of the Punch Sport Extra. Kejawa set for title bout March 1st. Yes, you would get the story on page 2 of the Punch Sport Extra. And lastly, Nuno praises Ainar's focus in Forest win. Yes, you would get more of these details on page 7 of the Punch Sport Extra. And that is how all we have for you for the lead stories. Yes, quickly we'll be reviewing our top stories on today's episode of Beyond the Headlines. So quickly we'll be reviewing the Nigerian Tribune. Yes, the Nigerian Tribune. Another Trump era begins. Another Trump era begins. Yes, this was actually a very good one for the Americans, for US yesterday. As we all know, it's all over the internet. It's everywhere. The news is trending. Donald Trump emerged as the 47th president of the US. He was once the 45th president. And he emerged the 47th president yesterday. It was all joy for the American in the US yesterday. And there was some particular thing that came about him coming in. He brought some executive orders that would be strictly followed. Now, as most of these orders caught my interest, and I'll be reading them all to you because I know you have interest in it as well. So quickly, I'll be reading them out. Yes. Yes, some of these executive orders that was laid by Donald Trump. All these things, they ought to be telling somebody. In fact, I was... Yes, okay. Sorry for that break in transmission. So quickly, we'll be giving you a recap of Trump's inauguration yesterday. It was such a wonderful day yesterday. We'll be giving you his full speech at his inauguration ceremony.
Thank you very much, everybody. Well, thank you very, very much. Vice President Vance, Speaker Johnson, Senator Thune, Chief Justice Roberts, Justices of the United States Supreme Court, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, President Biden, Vice President Harris, and my fellow citizens. The golden age of America begins right now. From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first. Our sovereignty will be reclaimed. Our safety will be restored. The scales of justice will be rebalanced. the vicious, violent, and unfair weaponization of the Justice Department and our government will end. And our top priority will be to create a nation that is proud, prosperous, and free. America will soon be greater, stronger, and far more exceptional than ever before. I return to the presidency confident and optimistic that we are at the start of a thrilling new era of national success. A tide of change is sweeping the country, sunlight is pouring over the entire world, and America has the chance to seize this opportunity like never before. But first, we must be honest about the challenges we face. While they are plentiful, they will be annihilated by this great momentum that the world is now witnessing in the United States of America. As we gather today, our government confronts a crisis of trust. For many years, a radical and corrupt establishment has extracted power and wealth from our citizens while the pillars of our society lay broken and seemingly in complete disrepair. We now have a government that cannot manage even a simple crisis at home, while at the same time stumbling into a continuing catalog of catastrophic events abroad. It fails to protect our magnificent, law-abiding American citizens, but provides sanctuary and protection for dangerous criminals, many from prisons and mental institutions that have illegally entered our country from all over the world. We have a government that has given unlimited funding to the defense of foreign borders, but refuses to defend American borders or, more importantly, its own people. Our country can no longer deliver basic services in times of emergency, as recently shown by the wonderful people of North Carolina, been treated so badly. And other states who are still suffering from a hurricane that took place many months ago. Or more recently, Los Angeles, where we are watching fires still tragically burn from weeks ago without even a token of defense. They're raging through the houses and communities, even affecting some of the wealthiest and most powerful individuals in our country, some of whom are sitting here right now. They don't have a home any longer. That's interesting. But we can't let this happen. Everyone is unable to do anything about it. That's going to change. We have a public health system that does not deliver in times of disaster, yet more money is spent on it than any country anywhere in the world. And we have an education system that teaches our children to be ashamed of themselves in many cases, to hate our country despite the love that we try so desperately to provide to them. All of this will change starting today, and it will change very quickly. My recent election is a mandate to completely and totally reverse a horrible betrayal and all of these many betrayals that have taken place, and to give the people back their faith, their wealth, their democracy, and indeed their freedom. From this moment on, America's decline is over. Our liberties and our nation's glorious destiny will no longer be denied, and we will immediately restore the integrity, competency, and loyalty of America's government. Over the past 8 years, I have been tested and challenged more than any president in our 250-year history, and I've learned a lot along the way. The journey to reclaim our republic has not been an easy one, that I can tell you. Those who wish to stop our cause have tried to take my freedom and indeed to take my life. Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. That is why each day under our administration of American patriots, we will be working to meet every crisis with dignity and power and strength. We will move with purpose and speed to bring back hope, prosperity, safety, and peace for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed. For American citizens, January 20th, 2025 is Liberation Day. It is my hope that our recent presidential election will be remembered as the greatest and most consequential election in the history of our country. As our victory showed, the entire nation is rapidly unifying behind our agenda with dramatic increases in support from virtually every element of our society, young and old, men and women, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, urban, suburban, rural, and very importantly, we had a powerful win in all 7 swing states, and the popular vote, we won by millions of people. To the Black and Hispanic communities, I want to thank you for the tremendous outpouring of love and trust that you have shown me with your vote. We set records, and I will not forget it. I've heard your voices in the campaign, and I look forward to working with you in the years to come. Today is Martin Luther King Day, and his honor, this will be a great honor, but in his honor we will strive together to make his dream a reality. We will make his dream come true. Thank you. Thank you. National unity is now returning to America, and confidence and pride is soaring like never before. In everything we do, my administration will be inspired by a strong pursuit of excellence and unrelenting success. We will not forget our country. We will not forget our Constitution, and we will not forget our God. Can't do that. Today I will sign a series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense. First, I will declare a national emergency at our southern border. All illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came. We will reinstate my Remain in Mexico policy. I will end the practice of catch and release. And I will send troops to the southern border to repel the disastrous invasion of our country. Under the orders I signed today, we will also be designating the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And by invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, I will direct our government to use the full and immense power of federal and state law enforcement to eliminate the presence of all foreign gangs and criminal networks, bringing devastating crime to U.S. soil, including our cities and inner cities. As Commander-in-Chief, I have no higher responsibility than to defend our country from threats and invasions, and that is exactly what I am going to do. We will do it at a level that nobody's ever seen before. Next, I will direct all members of my cabinet to marshal the vast powers at their disposal to defeat what was record inflation and rapidly bring down costs and prices. The inflation crisis was caused by massive overspending and escalating energy prices, and that is why today I will also declare a national energy emergency. We will drill, baby, drill. America will be a manufacturing nation once again, and we have something that no other manufacturing nation will ever have, the largest amount of oil and gas of any country